Or remember when Chris Brown was in the country and people were fangirling over him to the point where like he actually had to swat off some woman's phone? Like people were fangirling and a lot of it was women. Like actually the main people that were fangirling were women. And that was because Chris Brown was in the country. Like some of y'all fangirl over your favorite pastors to the point where you're calling some of them daddy. Like, come on, bruh. And you're really, really losing it because
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. He is also a man who continues to include running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than a tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to speak on dating. Actually, the main topic is about dating, more so singlehood, but a lot of it does revolve around women. This isn't because I have anything against women, it's just a lot of the changes that seem to be affecting the dating market might actually be there because, or at least in large part due to changes that have been happening to women over, the course of history, if I can put it like that. And it is something that is a continuation. I did start part 1 on the previous episode, and this is part 2. And I aim to go as deep as I need to go so that I can get the most out of it as I need to get. But all in all, I hope that you do enjoy what you're listening to, and should you like it, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic or a potential guest for me to interview, then you can always slide into my DMs. The DMs are always open. The social media links are in the description, and should you feel a little bit lazy, you just don't want to go and look at the description, then I usually mention them at the end of the episode. And as a result of that, I hope you listen all the way till the end of the episode. Now, with all of that said, a couple of things happened this week that I felt like talking about. I would have gone into the whole Christy and Desmond breakup thing, which I think took a lot of social media by storm, and people have been talking about it for like the entirety of this past week, at least, this week when the episode comes out. And frankly, like, it's not something that I'm supposed to really give a flying shit about. Like, I'm a dude. This really isn't the kind of content that I'm usually into. And so, as a result of that, I didn't really look too deeply into it. Although I am fairly up to date as far as details are concerned, and considering that I do not endorse cheating on this podcast, I really can't say much besides I can probably understand why dude might have made this decision. Not that I endorse it, but there's different opinions from different places around the entire thing. But all in all, like, that wasn't what I really wanted to talk about. What I actually wanted to talk about was I Show Speed. Now, for those of y'all that don't know, or you didn't really care to know, I Show Speed was in Kenya, and most people in Nairobi, if not most people in online Kenya, or at least the Kenyan online community, was probably aware of this. Partially because the guy did shut down like pieces of the road, and like there was quite a lot of traffic around him, and he had quite a massive crowd that followed him. But besides just that, and also the live stream, which was considered to be one of the largest live stream that he's had, actually, which, as a Kenyan, it does make me a little bit prideful. It was also the way that people were reacting after the fact, like the memes that people started making. Because I can remember, like, the stream was pretty nice. He did a couple of interesting things. He went, I think he made ugali. He fed some milk to a rhino, adopted it, and called it Rhinaldo, which was very on the nose. And, he went and he had quite a blast with people online, but mostly even like with general Kenyans that were generally like super happy to actually see Speed. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think most people actually knew Speed up until like very recently. And I think he's just one of those guys that's almost like designer. Like, for anyone that remembers the rapper Designer, like, you don't really think that the guy is to spit bars, and minus the Panda song, you didn't really think too much about the guy. But if there is one thing that anyone who has interacted with him will tell you, is that the guy is just hype and vibes. And honestly, like, I Show Speed is kind of like that. So for most people that were really into it, like, it was the fact that it was very high energy, and he's a very high energy individual. But for some reason, like a bunch of women seem to be clowning the guys that were all about Aishu Speed and were busy, can I say, fangirling, towards him and everything. And like they were caught on stream saying, oh, recognize me, Aishu Speed, I'm your biggest fan. Like people seem to be making fun of like all the guys that were there, and they were talking about how, oh, your avoidant boyfriend isn't avoidant, he just doesn't like you. Look at how he was behaving when Aishu Speed was in the country. Or imagine your boyfriend being one of those guys that was busy screaming for Aishu Speed. And it was interesting how such a thing was happening. Fortunately, some people picked up on it and they actually did start talking about it. But personally, like, I saw that, and at first I found it a little bit funny, but after I just felt like it was a bit sad, because like, why is it that as guys, as men, we can't be open and expressive about our liking of something? Like, you find the guys being clowned for crying because Arsenal lost. Or, for example, when France didn't win the World Cup and it instead went to Argentina, like there were some people that were in tears. Like, you'd find that guys are being clowned for that, and they're like, oh, why are you people crying? Why are guys, really losing it and like fasting and like deciding that they're not going to eat because of a game? And you also find instances where someone like Aishu Speed, and yes, I know the earlier ones were a little bit extreme, but you find an instance where Aishu Speed is in the country and guys are losing their shit, and suddenly it's like, oh my goodness, how can you do that and you're a man? And the thing is, I feel as though people guard masculinity like it's this special thing, but at the same time, it's almost always being weaponized against men who actually want to express themselves, at least on an emotional level, that is. Because when you look at it, like, there's nothing wrong with those guys fangirling on Aishu Speed. Like, these guys are fans of Aishu Speed. Like, dude is doing his thing. And I can remember how, like, after seeing those memes, there was another video that I saw like almost immediately after. I guess the algorithms know me too well. It was one where a lady was busy talking about how women don't like it when men are happy. And there was something else that was added on top of that. I don't want to get too deeply into it, but when I thought about it, it actually did kind of click, because there was something else that I heard a comedian saying not too long ago where they were like, women like being happy, but women don't like men being happy, not unless if they're responsible for their happiness. So it's like, you would want your man to be happy, you would want to see your boyfriend being happy because you got him something nice, or because you're doing something sweet for him. And like, if this guy cried tears of joy on your wedding day, you'd be like, oh my goodness, it was such an emotional moment for him because he was so happy. But this man decides to cry tears of joy for Aishu Speed because he's seeing him for the first time in his life, face to face, in person, in his country, and suddenly it's a big thing. Like, have you seen how you guys fangirl? And mind you, I use the term fangirling because it is actually a term. Like, when you think about it, imagine the number of women that lose their shit when they see Beyonce on the screen. Beyonce, Or remember when Chris Brown was in the country and people were fangirling over him to the point where like he actually had to swat off some woman's phone? Like, people were fangirling, and a lot of it was women. Like, actually the main people that were fangirling were women. And that was because Chris Brown was in the country. Like, some of y'all fangirl over your favorite pastors to the point where you're calling some of them daddy. Like, come on, bruh. And you're really, really losing it because your mans or guys are showing love to a guy called Aishu Speed, who's nothing but positivity and just hyper vibes. Like, why is that such a big problem for some of y'all to take in? Like, don't get me wrong, I can get the whole being a suave dude and being chilled and acting all nonchalant and shit might work in some instances for some people, but if someone wants to be expressive and enjoy the moment, let them do it sometimes. As long as it's not utterly embarrassing in a bad way, I don't see why they shouldn't. And honestly, for the people that clocked that and pointed it out, thank you very much for bringing it to the masses, especially the ones that might not listen to this episode. But honestly speaking, I feel like you all need to start letting men express themselves a little bit more. Otherwise, whatever masculinity y'all try to gatekeep doesn't really make sense, because if there's no emotional outlets, then for the most part, y'all are just raising people to either suppress themselves emotionally or just have zero emotion or emotional connection, which means zero emotional management. Although Then again, maybe I'm just getting a little bit philosophical and I'm making something heavy out of something light, so I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, for those of y'all that may not have listened to the previous episode, and even for those that probably listened but didn't get to the main topic, I was busy discussing the concept of the relationship recession. And to kind of explain it for those that didn't entirely understand it or listen to the previous episode, it was basically this idea that we're having an issue of singlehood amongst many more people today than ever before, as opposed to, let's say, for example, the number of single people that weren't partnered up and living with someone back in like 2017. And as such, it was a term that was developed by the people at the Economist, and it kind of went into discussing a couple of the things that are causing the singlehood, or at least the relationship recession, which just seems like a fancier word for singlehood. But all in all, essentially it was about that. Now, I kind of went into the entire thing and I gave my thoughts on how I felt like the article, or at least the post itself, seemed very biased towards men, because it seemed to show how much more positive it seemed for women, while making it seem like it was a fairly bad thing for men. But all in all, the thing that I did say on the episode is there's a lot of reasons for why we have singlehood right now, and I couldn't fit it into one episode, and I discussed a couple of things. And so this is me basically coming back to speak on some of the other things that are involved. Now, first of all, I want to give at least the breakdown of where all of this started. So I'm going to let the video play, then I can give some of the breakdowns that I gave before, then I can continue. So without further ado,
here at The Economist, we think it's time to declare a new kind of recession, a relationship recession. We crunched the numbers, and there are at least 100 million more single people today than if coupling rates had stayed the same as they were in 2017. And in America, 50% of men and 41% of women aged 25 to 35 are not living with a partner, a share that's doubled in the past 50 years. This rise in singlehood isn't a straightforwardly bad thing. There's less social pressure for women to get married, they can now earn more than they used to, and divorce is easier than in the past. All this means is that they no longer have to settle for an unhappy union, and that is a huge liberation. Today, many people, especially women, are happy to remain single, but surveys also suggest that most singles would rather be in a relationship. So why are these singles not mingling? One reason is that society has changed in ways that make large numbers of heterosexual men and women less compatible. As opportunities in work and education have improved for women, they no longer need a male partner to support them. Many men are struggling to adapt. In the OECD, a club of mostly rich countries, 51% of women aged 25 to 34 had a university degree in 2019, compared with just 39% of men. You might expect that this will create couples where the woman was better educated, but women still seem to have a preference for men with higher earning potential.
Hey.
One study in Germany found that educated women over 30 were more likely to stay single than partner with a less educated man, so men without college degrees struggled to attract partners. This new reality is making some men angry. Take South Korea, for example. A survey suggests that around half of young Korean men think they are discriminated against, and some 60% complain that feminism demeans them. Meanwhile, many young Asian women avoid marriage because they're expected to shoulder childcare and housework alone. They worry that the opportunity cost of marriage is too high, that it will harm their careers without making them happy. Another problem concerns dating apps. You might think they would make it easier to find a match, but they could be making people much pickier. Reporting in the Wall Street Journal suggests that most women on Bumble screen out all men who are less than 6 feet tall, which is about 85% of them. Some people are even turning to technology to find partners who will never reject them. A striking 7% of young singles say they would consider a robo-romance with an AI companion. As these love bots get more sophisticated, they could aggravate the decline of human relationships. Many people worry that a world with fewer couples and children will be sadder and more atomized. Yet some of these problems may be self-correcting. How men and women relate to each other has changed enormously in the past, and could do so again.
Okay, so that is the video that I had basically based this entire topic off of. And to be quite honest, like when I look at everything that's been said, I kind of maintain the same things that I was saying in the previous episode. It did seem very biased against men, because the only time they were bringing up the men's side was when it was like, oh, if you're a less educated man, and apparently it's like there's men that are angry that feminism exists, and how apparently like, oh, the current state of affairs has made it so much harder. Like, there's all of this that seems negative towards men, but in reality, I feel like a lot of those issues are across the board. But all in all, I think the only thing that I forgot to mention was how I found it interesting that they say 50% of men aren't partnered up and living with their partners, but 41% of women are. Like, where's that 9%? Are those 9% part of like those like 3 relationship type things, where it's like one man living with 2 women type things? Like, I don't know. That was one of the things that I was kind of wondering at some point. But anyways, that's sort of besides the point. Maybe there's also, like maybe more women. So for the same number of men, it could be the case. But all in all that aside, so when I was discussing this in the previous episode, and I was talking about how there's multiple reasons for singlehood, and I would need more than one episode, what I discussed were more the society-related reasons, of which I spoke on how there is less pressure to get married now more than ever. So, there's a lot more people that are taking longer to get married. And even though it may be considered easier to divorce in some parts of the world, what I know for Kenya is that it's a lot easier to get separated without any societal impact. Also, the element of women making more money has kind of really shaped things up in more ways than one, of which I do intend on mentioning some of those other ways, although a little bit later, whereby they are just a little bit more picky, and they are not ready to like upset their own lives just to be with a man. And like the fact that they make more money can be intimidating for a lot of men that don't make the same or more. Then there's also the issue of more entitlement on both sides, where there's a lot more women nowadays that believe that a guy should be a quote-unquote provider, and there's a lot of guys that believe that if they make enough money they should be allowed to fuck around. Like, certain things like that have made people a little bit more entitled on either side, which has made it harder to date. So now I get to bring up some of the other issues that do affect singlehood, or at least that do make singlehood a lot more possible for a lot more people out here. Now, I have more personal related issues, or at least more personally centered issues. So like the fact that nowadays people are happier single more than ever. And I say this because a lot of times, like especially in the past, people would talk about how like, oh, you need to find someone. Even when someone's made a lot of money and you're a guy, you find that people basically expect you to go ahead, get a babe, get married, have some kids, or just get someone to be with. Not unless if you're trying to live the life of a rock star. And I know this because like even people in the village kind of think of it like that. But nowadays, you look at women that are making a lot of money, and it's like them getting a guy may upset the kind of independence that they've built for themselves, and they're not too happy about it, or they're not too willing to, make that sacrifice. And they're like, what? I would much rather stay single until the right guy comes along. Then there's other guys that look at it and they're like, I don't really need to date right now, especially guys that start making quite a bit of money. Like, I once spoke about the whole money man paradox thing, where it's like, if you're a guy and you don't have money, you're not really liked all that much by the women that you do want, and you would want to like settle down with. Then suddenly you make money and those women want you, but you either don't want them or you don't want to settle down with them. And it's a pretty interesting paradox that happens, because like there's a lot of guys that will start making a lot of cash, and suddenly it's like the idea of wanting to settle down with just one babe becomes hard, because they're getting so much attention, or at least they're able to get so many other women, or they're getting so much attention from a lot of different women. And so asking them to settle down with just one is particularly hard for them, because they're not used to getting that much attention and they love it. And not unless if they get to a point where they feel like it's vapid, which for a lot of guys can take quite a while, like it's something that they'll want to keep and continue doing, for time and time and time, all the way like till maybe even the end of time. And that can make dating hard for them. And like even for the women, that whole independence can make dating hard for them, which actually leads on to the next point, which is mate selection has actually become a much bigger problem than ever before. Whether we're talking about the character development that people are going through or have gone through, or whether we're talking about, possibly shit selections in the dating market, people are talking about how mate selection is harder than ever now, and there's a multitude of elements that are assisting that. Whether it's men who are making money being able to pull babes, whether it's the ease at which people can get sex nowadays, whether it's the fact that, there's a lot fewer guys that are looking forward to settling down, and even the fact that people have just had bad experiences in the dating market, so they just don't want to date, mate selection is a little bit harder. So as a result, there's more people that are single. And if you're following what the Economist video was saying, it does make it seem as though it's the women that are ejecting themselves from mate selection or being in the dating market because of that. But it's not just the women. Even men seem to be happy in that state where they're not really trying to look for anything serious. Because you find that, I mentioned, maybe 10 episodes ago, where I was busy talking about this guy who helped some other dude move houses. And this is a guy that's making good money. He moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a pretty upmarket part of Nairobi simply because he wanted a room for his office and for gaming. And yet this guy is making good enough money and he's living a good enough life that he can even manage to sustain having a wife and maybe 1 or 2 kids. But the guy isn't interested in any of that. He's not even interested in dating because any of the sex that he'd want, he'd probably get for free, and a babe would probably be stress for him. So when you look at people that are like that and they have the potential of being in the dating market but they've ejected themselves, you can find that mate selection might be a little bit hard because there's many good options but they're not even selecting themselves to put themselves up as options. Then there's time, or at least the times, which have created incompatibility. And you see that a lot more with the fact that women are earning more money and they're becoming more educated. This has created a bit of an issue because there's a lot of women that will earn more and will not want a guy that earns less than them, or they will want a man who is a provider. This provider man thing, let me not talk too much about it, but there's that. There's also the bit where they want a guy that's also similarly educated, although sometimes if you have more money you can offset that. But essentially, the fact that they want a man that either earns the same if not more, and they want a similarly educated man might make it hard for them, especially since there's a lot fewer guys that seem to be graduating from schools. And this isn't just in the US. Even here in Kenya, I see more guys who've dropped out of school and tried something as opposed to the guys that are trying to finish school. I remember speaking to a female friend of mine who had gone for her master's about a year or 2 ago, and she was talking about how, I think it was maybe save for one guy, everyone else in her class was actually female. So the entire time, and she did a couple of other professional courses and they were all majority female. So if more women are seeking men that are just as educated, if not more educated than them, then there's a lot of men that may be getting out of, or at least may be getting filtered out, simply because they're not as educated as some of the women that they may be approaching. Then also, the fact that women have been making more money, and yes, I know, I've been talking about women making more money quite a bit, but just know, this is something that has affected a lot of our social dynamics in ways that many people may not get. But the fact that there's a lot more women that are making a lot more money, they feel like there is less need for men. They will talk about how they do not need a man, how they do not want to be with a man, or just they don't need a man. And them saying that, and them saying that a lot, means that they are less reliant on the idea of getting a partner and are willing to either outsource the services that they would like, whichever services they'd like, or they will get a man just for casual reasons or for nothing that is very, very long term. And as such, a lot of them may remain single or may even avoid being with men and simply remain just single the entire time. And you'd wonder why that's the case. And I do have a couple of social issues that are responsible for this, which are also reasons why we have a bunch of singlehood. And the first one is what I would probably refer to as modern feminism. Now, you could call this third wave or third degree feminism. It's the one where, like, they basically said that women are oppressed, even though, we have tried and we continue to try in as many ways as possible, our level best, to try and make the world a little bit safer, a little bit better for women. But as usual, it's like men oppressing women, men are trash, and the patriarchy that is working against them. And as a result, sometimes those single women will dissuade other single women from actually dating men, because a lot of us are, proper red flags and we have icks and we're not that great. Also, the traditional family dynamics just don't seem like very workable ideas for a lot of women. I've always spoken about how women were fed a dual dream where it seems very parallel and they might work together, but it does get to a point where it becomes very hard to maintain it. Where you can choose to be a career woman that is high flying and, progressing up the ladder, or you can choose to be a traditional wife, or you can choose to be the wife of someone and take care of a couple of kids, but sacrifice the growth that you would get at the rate that you would probably be able to hit it at if you didn't have, say, a family with a couple of kids. And so it can become a bit of an issue, and especially if you have, for example, a very traditional husband or a traditional father, then it can become hard for such a thing to actually flourish. So as a result of that, there's a lot of women that may decide to just be the rich single auntie that does not really have anyone. So you'll have a bunch of that, then you'll go back into the dating market and you'll suddenly realize that even though maybe you're not looking for a traditional man in the sense of, he can also try and take care of the kids and all, you have this illusion of choice because of dating apps. Now, dating apps have created this choice illusion for a lot of people, mostly women, although social media does the same thing, where they basically make it seem as though you are all tens and you should ask for the absolute top tier dude. And so there's a bulk of you that might still be looking for a guy in finance who's 6'5" with blue eyes. And unfortunately, over time, you realize how much harder it is to find someone that's 6 feet tall. But once I get to the self-correction, I feel like that is usually where a bunch of that comes along. But there are quite a number of you that do get choice illusion online and you get fed the wrong idea. And as a result, some of y'all are still waiting for Prince Charming, yet Prince Charming already got married and has a bunch of kids. Just saying. Then I can also include robo-romances, as they said in the video, or what I would probably liken it to parasocial relationships online, which is closer to like the guy that's following and paying for the OnlyFans creators stuff because, they feel some sort of a connection. And in as much as I know robo-romances are something that may not affect a lot of people, especially in this part of the world, I do feel like parasocial relationships do seem to be gaining a bit of a foothold. And as such, there's some guys that may not be getting into the dating market because they can beat their meat and follow their favorite OnlyFans creator and start paying for a bunch of stuff because they want to have some sort of a pseudo relationship. So there's a bunch of all of these things that seem to be happening, okay? But on the plus side, at least there is some self-correction, like they said in the video. All right, so if anything, much as I mentioned all of these things, I do believe that there are self-corrections that are happening. Now, there's a lot more people that are deleting the dating apps, and there's a lot more people that are spending more time outside of social media and at actual events. So even though you might have said that you're looking for a guy who's 6 feet tall in your dating apps, there's a pretty good chance that you might end up falling for the guy that's 5'9" or 5'8". Reason being, the vast chunk of you women don't really know the difference between a guy who's 5'9" and a guy who's 6 feet tall. Y'all just want a tall guy. So, provided the guy is taller than you by a couple of inches, then he can probably fit the bill. And as such, I do believe that that's the case. Also, people are going out and touching grass, and people are interacting a little bit more. Also, we're opening up to a little bit more open or newer dating dynamics that we're not used to seeing. So we are seeing older women dating younger guys. We are seeing thruples, which I'm still not the biggest fan of, but if it works for you, it works for you. And also we're admitting the fact that we might actually be having an issue and we're trying to find ways to address it. So whether that's through open forums or dating events or just going for events where people should just meet up, chill and mingle, or even asking friends and family members for the hookup, aka an arranged marriage, we are opening ourselves up to it and actually trying to self-correct in the best ways possible. So if anything, much as there is a bunch of singlehood, at least we have started trying to figure out ways to combat it. And because of time, I am just going to conclude, and I'm going to say that there's nothing wrong with being single. There's nothing wrong with singlehood at all. If it is something that you like and it is something that you're into, go ahead and do it. But there's a lot of people that aren't single by choice, and that is what we're trying to assist on here. So if you do feel like some of the people that have been affected by the relationship recession, then you clearly know that you need to do something about it. But if you don't feel like you are a part of them, then by all means, go do you, boo. Either way, maybe I might be wrong, maybe I have the wrong idea, or maybe I haven't included anything on the reasons why singlehood exists. But either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at BagakaTheD. And on Bluesky, it is at the BreaktimePod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.